Half a day, my name is Hannah Mendiola. I'm the program coordinator for GALA, and we're a nonprofit organization focused on uplifting the LGBT plus community through advocacy, support, and education.
Perfect.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Kathleen Uggan, or some of you guys in this room might have known me as Kat. I'm from West Care Pacific Islands, and our family is showing up today. We are a nonprofit organization as well, but we have an array of services from veteran population to substance abuse and counseling treatment to the prevention or youth enrichment programs and services.
Half a day, good morning, everybody. My name is Robbie Bautista. I'm with the Rotaract Club of the Marianas. I was the program manager for our Leadership and Resiliency program. I'm also the current president. Rotaract is a youth, a young adult organization. If you're familiar with Rotary, we're pretty much the young adult group, and we service our community mainly working with youth.
Awesome. So they told me I can ask any questions I want, just so we can get kind of learning about the organizations. I know that we talk about helping people, and Lieutenant Governor pointed it out so much, right? It starts with the kids. All of your organizations deal with the younger aged members of our community. Why do you think it's so important for that to be something we focus on? Anybody can answer.
I think it's important because eventually these kids are going to be adults. And so working in prevention with children just makes sense. And then also, I'm pretty sure we all have our own ideas of where the kids should be nowadays, or we're concerned about what's happening with them. But I'll let the rest talk on that.
Yeah, and I completely agree with Hannah. A lot of times, you look at the youth programs or the prevention programs, and they just they kind of look at it as like one of the community resources. But in the prevention community, we really take pride in being able to empower our community, and with our population, we start off, like you said, with the youth. And I mean, they have so much energy and so much potential. And when we empower them with the skills and the tools, we just create a better community for all of us, and it's just waiting on the horizon.
And just to add on, so yes, of course I concur with my colleagues here. And then for me, it's also kind of a personal thought to give back to the youth. Being a youth, obviously we were all youth at one point in our lives, right? And just kind of thinking back on what was offered to me and what was available to me, and just recognizing that if I had access to those kinds of prevention efforts, if I was a part of those things, certain decisions would have been made on my part. And then working with the youth, again, they're so energetic, they want to learn, they want to know all these things, and sometimes that's not always a bad thing, and being the people that give them the correct information, give them the correct resources to learn about something is better than them, finding it out somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, and I'm going to be real with you here, they don't actually see the severity of the situation, right? For a lot of us, we still live in our time, and in our minds, we maybe haven't been exposed to a lot of the more modern troubles that our youth find themselves engaged in. One of them is drug use. I mean, is it a problem in your work, in what you've seen? Is there a drug problem with the youth, do you think, that needs to be addressed?
Yes, there is. And not only is there data that supports all of that in all of our works, of course, what we do, yes, we provide all these programs for the kids and we get to make them exciting, but behind the scenes, we have to collect data to be able to present it and present it to the community as a whole that this really is a problem. But that's not to say that it's a problem that we can't fix. And that's the reason why we have the programs we have. That's the reason why we go out to the community. We work with the schools, is because we recognize that there is a problem, but we also recognize that it can be stopped where it's at.
I appreciate that. And for a lot of us parents too, right? It's just me at home. It's just me and my 3 kids. Dude, those kids lie. I went to a PTO meeting last week. And they were like, your children all got this. And my son was like, and I went in his bag and it was there. So we got to deal with these kinds of things all the time. So to have the support that you guys are providing is definitely going to be helping with a lot of people and really helping to point the future in the right direction. Can you share with us some effective strategies, some successes from your programs? And I know, I'm not expecting you to share any names or anything like that. Of course not. But tell us, give us some good news, something I can Instagram later.
Yeah, so recently, just this summer, we had a summer camp, and our 4 programs really collaborated. The youth enrichment programs, we had a healthy relationship program, we have a substance abuse prevention program, we have a coalition, and then we also had our youth counseling program that banded together through Focus on Life grant. And what we were able to do was host a camp, and we were able to give them the skills to recognize what a healthy relationship looks like, how to build that, how to have goals and how to achieve them. We also gave them the refusal skills, but the most wonderful part of it was that if one of the youth, and we had a few instances, when the youth exhibited signs of self-harm or disclosed, that they're struggling through some behavioral health issues, our clinicians were on site and they were ready to screen and get them linked to resources. And I'm happy to say that those youth were able to get immediate help from GOPEACE because it was on site and it was right there while we still had them at the summer camp.
That's amazing. One hand clap. That was good.
Successes, I think any size of a camp or an after-school program or the in-school efforts that we do have are all successes because at least you're meeting those children. What can I say? I think the time that I feel the most success is when I'm reading the satisfaction surveys. And these surveys we issue out, we let them tell us, hey, what's working, what's not. And a lot of the times I get comments that they want to take the program again, or they want to engage with us somehow, some way. And yeah, I think the one comment that stood out to me was that they felt respected. They said, I feel respected. And I was thinking to myself, as when I was a child, I did not necessarily feel like the adults respected what I had to say. And so getting that feedback, I think that's where the success is really at. And also being able to look forward to what you can provide in the future. So maybe you were just in the central area of the island one year. Maybe the next year you can go to the south or you can go to the north. Trying to see what you can do in the future, I think, is a sign of success.
I love that. I love that for sure. And Rotaract, you guys just had a big old event the other day.
Yes, thank you, Kyle, for joining us. I'll speak on 2 successes. So when it comes to our Leadership Represents program that we work in school with specific cohorts of students, hearing the feedback at the end of the program, having kids tell me every time, no matter what I'm feeling, whenever I leave this session, I always leave with a smile. And then just learning, just them saying comments like, I feel more self-aware, I know how to recognize how I'm feeling, and feeling just validated in how they're feeling and being heard by us. And definitely our Rotaract Youth Leadership Conference last Friday that was held, my heart was so full that day, just all the kids, seeing all the kids enjoy themselves, and just really also fall in love with our keynote speaker that came in from California, Mr. Davey Liu. When I heard him speak, I knew I would be inspired. I was inspired, and I really wanted to bring him to Guam. And when he did come and he did present, everybody loved him. I got a lot of compliments on bringing him back, and I believe he's set to come back for the university as well at some point. Dr. Nita definitely connected with him. But yeah, just being able to see all the kids really enjoy and take in what we do for them and what we prepare for them just really always hits me really hard, and I really cried after.
You cried after?
I did.
Is that what you said? All right. Clap so she doesn't cry anymore. Then stop crying. Okay, so we talk about these events, we talk about these successes and being able to be out there. And something that I always tell my students when I teach, and like when I have the opportunity to present as well at your conference, is believe it or not, like they've laid it out and they've said across many different spans of science and research and all of that, this is the most stressful time for a generation in the existence here. I mean, obviously not when those asteroids were coming down and killing dinosaurs, but for us normal folks, this time has got unprecedented levels of stress from unprecedented areas. I mean, how do you deal with that in terms of the kids and helping them to deal with that? Because as much as we can say, when I was your age, I did it like this, I did it like this, I didn't have to worry about Facebook or Instagram or trolls, you know what I mean? Back in our day, they just troll you to your face. But now they troll you everywhere. That they troll your friends and they troll everybody. So how do you guide or navigate through that with your clients and helping them to kind of get around that?
I can speak on something that we do in our program. So one of the lessons that we have is neurotransmitters. And so we talk about the dopamine, serotonin, but not only what it does to their body, but ways that they can get these chemicals naturally instead of turning to unnatural highs. So letting them know that this is something that they can access in their own body. If they're feeling down, open the window, open the shutters, feel the sunlight if you're not allowed outside. Different ways that they can actually help themselves. And so we print out like a little cheat sheet for that, so they can put it in their binder. Yeah, so things like that. They need real solutions to what they're feeling, and letting them learn the difference between positive and negative stress. I think everyone feels stress at some point, but if you make the kids feel safe enough, that's when their stress levels go down.
Okay, can you share with us adults now? Tell us about what are the things, because I think that's so riveting. You said open the window unless there's a typhoon. What other ways can we get that? Love Island on Peacock, that's so good.
Just you getting us to laugh, the hits of dopamine we're getting, just
Never
sharing.
stop.
Just getting that. The icebreakers, I mean, those are real ways to engage people, but they're also activating physical things in our brain. So stuff like that. I usually encourage them to listen to music. One thing that we do in our workshops or even our summer camp programs, I make them write down all the songs that they like. They get to choose 3 only, but then they get to put it in a playlist. So in the background, they're listening to their playlist that they made. So every time they hear, oh, my music's on, they feel comfortable. They get that little hit of dopamine, and that just supports an environment for them to be comfortable enough to share with us and be open.
Very nice, great suggestions, thank you. Yes, clap. 2 hands.
And and also, I kind of want to touch what Hannah was talking about with having them select their playlist. Small decisions like that, or small things that you incorporate into your services, your programs, it really goes a long way because they feel seen. One of the things that we do right from the jump when we do summer camps is we have the kids write down their names, not by their government names, but rather how they would like to be addressed. And that also allows us to create a safe space for them to express how they are with their identity, and also respecting their social and emotional safety, because that's how, if they show up to the world as one person, we would like to acknowledge and honor their dignity by showing up as that person that day. One of the other things that we do as a collective, as an organization, is we make sure that our staff are trained in whatever resources or latest youth engagement strategies are out there. We also partner up with our community partners like Gala, so that we can be more informed on how we can be more inclusive and have practices that are creating that sense of belonging for our LGBTQ youth and the allies. So things like that might seem small, it really just goes a long way, because we are going above and beyond in what we are set out to do, but we are including every single youth that we have in this community.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And again, it goes back to kind of times and generations. My grandma, right? She passed away, but before she did, she loved the Kardashians. This is a true story. And so I walked in on her one. This is true. I walked in on her one time. She was watching the episode where Courtney gives birth, and Courtney delivered her own baby, right? And so my grandma was talking about how like she wasn't even impressed, but everybody in our generation was like, "Whoa, down! Get that money from your insurance because you delivered your own kid." My grandma literally was just like, "So what? She got a bed. I didn't have a bed. No, so yes." But one of those things that you mentioned was recognizing and acknowledging what the youth and what everybody else kind of identifies themselves as, whether it's their name or their haircut, whatever the case is, right? And that was another conversation I had with her because my niece, God bless her, she wanted us to start calling her Diamond. It's like, Diamond? Girl, Diamond? So everybody was like, I'm not calling her Diamond. And my grandma was one of those people who was just like, I'm not gonna, when I'm small, my mom told me my name, I used my name. I said, okay. But I had to kind of bring it into my grandma's context because I told her too. I said, Grandma, back in your day, like, black people and white people couldn't kiss on the mouth. You know what I mean? Like, stuff like that. And it kind of flipped the switch for her a little bit. And she didn't call my niece Diamond, but she wasn't mad about it either. And I think that my niece felt like a different level of acceptance. And, it's never been like not being accepted because my family's crazy. We'll accept you. But just for my niece to see my niece's eyeballs light up, and she's very like, like that. And so to see them light up when my grandma didn't say, hey, your name is not Diamond. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like little lessons like that, and like you said, it really goes a long way. And it gave her, I feel like, the confidence. Because now my girl, she work at Domino's Pizza. She doing her thing. She's talking to people more because she was very antisocial before. So now I'm like, call that girl Diamond. I don't know how they're going to do it on your paycheck. You're not going to be able to cash it. But just to give her that level of confidence, right? So I totally can hear what you're mentioning about that. Go ahead.
I'm a firm believer of meeting the youth where they're at. And I believe in that because it's the same for me. Like, I want someone to be able to meet me where I'm at. So no matter what I'm feeling in a day, whether I'm, feeling really good and happy, or if I'm really down. And so working with our kids when we come into a session, I mean, the great thing that I love about my program is that we can adapt on the spot. Like, we may have, a specific lesson plan or specific things we're supposed to do that day, but if we walk in and our kids kind of feel a little down, or we notice someone's not really participating, but where they used to be on another day, we'll talk about it. We'll try to ask them what's wrong. We'll kind of shift the conversation. And even me, myself, when I walk in, and if I'm not super feeling 100%, I'm honest with the kids. I tell them, like, guys, like, I love being here, but I kind of had a bad morning, and that's okay. And so, like, letting them know those kinds of things, because I've had students come up to me, like, on the side and say, like, Miss, thanks for saying that, because I wasn't having I wasn't having a good morning either. And for you to say that and be honest with us about that meant a lot to me. And so, just again, recognizing that they have all these feelings, and just like with us, we don't always feel 100%, and recognizing that they also don't. And sometimes you can chalk it up to like teen angst or what have you. But again, they feel the same things we feel, and it's just recognizing and giving them that space to feel that.
Where do we kind of draw the line, or is there even a line to draw between the way that maybe we were raised in our generation? You're too soft, get up, stop that, why are you crying, right? I mean, we've all kind of dealt with that along the way, I'm sure. Where do we see that line, and how do we move from that time to obviously now the kids are wired differently, they have different operating systems. We are Nintendo and they are Switch, you know what I mean? Like, they can do more, but they process things differently. Navigate around that for me, because a lot of people have that question, right? Am I being too hard on these younger people? And it goes beyond just kids, but also younger members of our workforce, younger team members, where they call in sick because their cat has a headache. how do we get through that? I'm sorry, I talk too much. I'm sharing all kinds of secrets. But whereas immediately I'm like, what? I recognize that I can't say the things that were said to me. Because in our day, I call in sick because my kid is sick. They're like, doesn't it have a mother? I'm like, eh? You know? So how do we get through that now? Like I'm not touching that one. Go ahead.
No. So honestly, working with the kids, at least working with the kids I've worked with, it really is recognizing that they have all the same feelings I had when I was a kid. Yes, I mean some things are different, obviously with the generation and even the way they talk can really go over our heads. But it's seeing the same negative feelings, the same things that ate me up when I was a kid. Honestly, seeing that in them really drives what I do. It really drives me being there. It really drives me wanting to help them again because it's a personal devotion for me that like I didn't feel like I had that. I didn't feel like anybody understood me. I didn't feel like uh, I mean, at one point when I was younger, I was giving up on life. I used to pop pills when I was in high school. I was suicidal, and I share this because some of these kids, when you really talk to them, when you really get them in a space to feel open and free, and again, like no judgment and safe space, they can really surprise you with what they tell you, and it scares you in a way because you don't want them feeling that way. You don't want them to have those kinds of thoughts. But then also recognizing that like, whoa, I used to feel that way too, and I know I'm here to help them not feel that way. And so really that's what drives what I do and just recognizing that yes, there are some things that obviously generational differences in just how we handle things, but there really are some things that just span the generations that just stay the same all the time. And that's something that you really have to recognize with the kids because they may want to handle things differently and they may want to be a lot more quieter or work with their, opt to turn to their friends instead of their family because they feel judged by their family or they feel if they bring it up even just once with their family, it could spark a whole conversation of like, oh, what's like so and so's thinking this way or oh, so and so's asking about this and again, it's recognizing that sometimes when they ask questions, it's not so much so that they want to try something or that I mean, again, it could be curiosity, but if you are connected to the right resources as adults, and that's what GOPEACE does, right? Not just at a youth level, but at an adult level as well. And being able to know that information so that you can communicate with your kids. Being a new mom of a 2.5-year-old, seeing all of this as I work in this field and find my passion in it and working with the kids, like it's teaching me, how I want to have conversations with my son when he gets older and making him feel safe to have those conversations with me versus having conversations like that with his friends or finding information online that, obviously we can't trust everything we read online. So
It's true. Very good. Yes.
Um, that's always like the challenge, right? There's that big divide. As I get older, I feel older, and I feel more disconnected with the youth population that I'm working with. But I also recognize that we have a team that might have more knowledge and expertise in how to connect with the youth, and so we use those resources. But one of the things that Robbie touched on was vulnerability. And a lot of times we're asking a lot from the kids that participate in our programs for them to open up, a space for us in their lives, to trust us, to be in this summer camp, to be part of the process, to, they're going to ask, why am I even here? My mom just signed me up, right? We always get that, but our job as adults is not to answer things for them. We're not there to solve their problems, and I think that's most of the time we're stuck in that adultism. We're stuck in this mode of like, we're older, we've gone through life, and we have the answers, listen to me. But we always forget that the problems that we are facing now are not the same problems we faced when we were youth. But when we were youth, we also didn't have Facebook, TikTok. We didn't have all these, channels to learn about somebody's dislike about us. We don't have all these pressure to look a certain way. It looked different back then, basically. And so we have to acknowledge that and go beyond acknowledging by also understanding them of maybe they have an idea of how to navigate through this, and we just have to listen. We just have to learn to sometimes take our time and not say anything and just let them share what they think or what they're going through. And also sometimes, somewhere buried in these stresses and the hardships and difficulties, there's a voice in them that knows kind of what to do next. They just need somebody to lift them up. They just need maybe an advocate, a youth advocate, maybe a trusted adult that can go over there and say, I got you. We got this. I'm with you every step of the day. And I think what our community needs to do is really embody that, right? They say it takes a village to raise a child, but if we look at a youth, what role can I play so that I can raise this child right? And I think that's something that we need to ask ourselves every single day as prevention community. How can I show up for our youth, right? And not just in my role as a program director or as a youth advocate, but rather, how can I show up for this kid in the school who just said, hey, miss, so-and-so said they're going through a tough time. And they might not necessarily be in our program, but how can I show up for that person? It might not be me, but it could be somebody that I know, like Hannah. I could connect that youth. And for me, I think being a link, if I'm not the right person, somebody else has to be. And I need to find that person.
Collaboration. Yes. Yes.
I think that we both made important points. And I do want to touch back on what Robbie said, let the youth lead. They know the generational differences. We remind them every day that we grew up differently. But then again, I think it's our responsibility to think about where we were and have empathy and understanding. Like, you must have been thinking the same thing when you were that age before. Oh, my elders don't get it, or they don't understand me. I had a good conversation with my papa about it, and he said, yeah, at one point my parents were saying, hey, we didn't have electricity, now we have the light bulb in your room, and you have aircon, and now I get to say you have Prime and Netflix, and so...
We used to have to go to the video store.
Yeah.
And if it was late, they had a late fee.
I like the video store. See, there's... I think people just attribute generational differences to technology when really that's not the case. Because we run into youth that don't have phones or iPads or tablets. My grandpa has a more recent iPhone than me. He's always he's always right there at the store every time they drop a new one. So I really think that the generational differences are only felt when you're not communicating to your kids. You want these values reflected to the kids, you need to exemplify those values. You can't expect them to know what you're saying in Chamorro if you're not teaching them Chamorro. We're the adults and they're the kids. And I think it's just learning our responsibility in that. So yeah, is my mom on her phone more than me? Yes. Love her so much. And she gets very nostalgic when she talks about all these things she valued about her generation. But I can be in a seat of appreciation and say, wow, this is how things used to be. This is really cool. Maybe we can go back to what we were doing before. Maybe we can, create art pieces of old places that used to be like Tova's something, Tova's Mart. See, I don't know. But it's something that I hear all the time. Oh, this used to be here, but it's not here anymore. And I guess listening to the stories is important, but if we want to connect between generations, we just have to acknowledge that they were just little versions of ourselves. They're not any truly different people. And I think respecting them as people first is how you bridge that gap.
Wonderful answer. That's great. I'm putting that on Instagram.
Okay.
And I'd like to highlight that you talked about your papa and having that discussion, right? My daughter the other day said, Daddy, Chamorro is an oral culture. I said, yes. She said, they used to tell stories all the time, and that's how everybody got things. I said, yes, baby, that's right. She said, in the future, they're going to say, Chamorro was a texting culture. Because now my mom, she'll just text them. And I say, Dale, Mom? And then she'll even like, send me a picture, where you at? And I'm like, why don't you come over here, you know? So like you said, kind of embracing that culture of technology and finding ways to integrate it with still, paying respect and acknowledging the ways that we've done it in the past, definitely going to help to bridge that communication gap. You mentioned earlier lessons, Robbie, right? What is the biggest lesson you guys have learned as a result of dealing with our youth?
So I work with, in a recent grant funding, our group was working with middle school youth. The biggest lesson was they're a whole different kind of beast. I previously worked with high schoolers, and so it was very, very different working between high schoolers and middle schoolers, because high schoolers, they're already at that level, they kind of know more, and so you kind of have to be a little bit more cognizant of like what you're teaching them, because sometimes they'll just come back at you with the same, already knowing the answers. But also, you get into more lengthy discussions with them. With the middle school youth, so again, great thing with our program is it's very adaptable. But with middle school youth, you really have to do everything you can to engage them. You really have to get them moving. You really have to get things interactive, because they'll get bored very easily. And this is the reason why our youth conference is the way it's set up the way it is. I mean, we have speakers, but we don't have them sitting for too long with our speakers. We mainly focus on team building activities, because it helps the kids engage, it helps them interact with the other youth in the room. So yeah, just recognizing that, like, especially specifically with middle school youth, you really have to show up with a lot of energy. And sometimes that energy isn't always there, but you find it somehow, whether it's your coffee or what have you, but you find it. But sometimes even working with them, they give you that energy that you may not have had when you walked into the room, and especially when they're so excited and they're ready to participate. They're like, Miss, what are we doing today? All this stuff. So it really wakes you up, and it really gets you, and again, gets you to meet them where they're at.
And like you said, kind of being able to pivot off of that, right? I did a presentation once for middle schoolers, and it started off as me talking about sustainability and how I want the earth to be around forever, and it ended with me karaokeing Bruno Mars. And they all sang along, and they put up their flashlights, and one of the kids was like, this is like a concert! And I was like, but don't throw trash on the ground! And they're like, okay!
Yes, I heard that was going on in your room.
That was at your conference, yes. All right. Kathleen, what are you thinking? What is a lesson that you've learned from dealing with the youth?
Man, it's the same thing like what Robbie said. You have to get their hands busy. So incorporating like things that they're interested in, like karaoke, right? Also digital storytelling, like bringing in people that could possibly teach them a skill on how to create digital stories or share their stories through digital media. But at the same time, you're putting in your evidence-based programming in there. And then also like just finding ways that you could possibly integrate like physical activity or something that would take up their time, and at the same side of that coin, you're going to be imparting some skills with them. So one of the things that I want to give a shout out to with our counter drug program on that table is that we were able to partner up with them with Guam Police Department, and they did a junior police cadet program. Yeah, and they were at how many schools? 8 schools, 9 schools? And these kids, they were like, sir, yes, sir, right? And it culminated to an event that showcased the youth and what they learned with formation, with marching.
So Ilana,
I
you
want
put
to
them in
say
formation?
some military jargon here. But so they were able to learn also discipline or instill discipline with the youth but at the same time thrives on opportunity for us to go in there and say, hey, while we have these kids in this junior police cadet program, why don't we also start teaching about vaping prevention? And so that's what we did while the kids were going through the hour and a half long with them. We injected some lessons about vaping prevention. And so one of the lessons for us is that it's always asking, how can we make this I guess, like a meatier programming for the youth? Because while we have them, this is such an opportunity to give them as much as we can.
Yeah.
And that's, that's touching on what Hannah said and Robbie said, meeting them where they're at. Because a lot of times it's transportation issues. Sometimes it's the parent and caregivers that are not able to provide that support, right? And so we really have to lean on our Guam Department of Education partners as well. And so that's one of our biggest lesson is really just finding those pockets of opportunities.
Maximizing them.
Exactly.
I love that. And you can tell like the attention span based on how they do their Instagram, right? Because if you watch an older person's Instagram, they're like, but if you watch a kid, they're like, like that. So try to get as much in there as you can. Great advice. Great advice. Sis, what are you thinking?
A lot. The kids taught me a lot working with youth like this. I've only been in this field for a little more than 2 years, but I've learned so much. The one that is I guess the primary on my mind though is that the kids, you should not be afraid of the kids. You cannot be afraid of them.
But middle schoolers are
and taken these lessons. And so we need to be a good role model to these kids. That's why we have our peer educator program. That's why we ask them to, when we're asking them to take responsibility for themselves, we need to also take responsibility for ourselves as well. I think that because they're watching and listening to us intently, just because they're not looking at you directly doesn't mean that they're not paying attention.
It's true.
They're just scanning and then going. They scan for the information they wanted to get, just like how you said they're scrolling real quick.
Yeah.
They're fast. Their processing is a little quicker
iOS,
than
their
us.
iOS is faster than ours.
Yeah. So I think that's the best point I can make. Don't be afraid of them. Embrace them. Recognize them as just other people, and everything else will follow.
Great advice. Thank you so much, Hannah. Ladies and gents, let's get a round of applause again for our first panel. We're not done yet. We're going to open up the floor now for some Q&A. Again, the discussion in this group is connection, empowering futures. How do we talk? How do we work with? How do we invest with a lot of our younger community members? And again, very important for us to say youth can mean so many different things to so many different people. To my 93-year-old neighbor, she still calls me young man. You know what I mean? Like, it's not the same. Auntie, I can't bend over. But those are the lines of questions that we're fielding for us. If there's anybody with any questions, you can go and raise your hand, and Amanda will come and bring you a microphone. We've got one down here. All right, I'm going to ask that if you are going to ask a question, if you can please stand up really quick. There you go.
My name is Callan. I work at New Beginnings. I'm a peer support specialist. Thank you, ladies, for all your work in this field. My question is, how do we make sure that we're targeting the audience that's at the highest risk? So I work with adults with substance use disorder, and I notice oftentimes it's their children that may be needing to be participating in these programs, whether it's the summer camps or the after-school programs, but this demographic community is oftentimes also at the lower end of the socioeconomic, so they're the ones that are running out of minutes, like when we're trying to text them. They often have transportation challenges. is there a way we can connect, or even like kids of incarcerated individuals, like make sure that they're like first maybe, or prioritized at participating in these programs? 'Cause I noticed the kids that have the opportunity to do it and their parents are really into it, maybe aren't necessarily the demographic that's highest at risk for substance use or mental health issues. So how do we address that?
Great question, Caleb. Thank you so much. Guys, what are you thinking?
Hello, yes. So, most of our prevention programs, it's built under the continuum of care, right? The model. And so, for our youth enrichment programs, we have adopted a universal approach for our evidence-based programming. However, I think that there's always, and I share the same sentiment with you. I always feel that there should be more resources and more prevention services that should be available for youth with higher risk or higher numbers of risk factors, and that includes incarcerated parents or caregivers, or those that are going through recovery and treatment. They have different, there's different nuances really that go into that. And one of the things that we want to provide is to go into, or to be more accessible for that specific population of the youth. Some of the parts of our evidence-based curriculum could be modified. So the beautiful thing about it is that we've worked with our developers for the curriculum, and we've identified select number of lessons from the curriculum itself, and we could tailor that to the population or the risk factors that we're working with. That could be one way to kind of bridge the gap. We've worked with youth and DYA in providing our program as well. So the youth and DYA that has been detained, there were some difficulties, but they just really enjoyed having somebody to do that kind of programming within their facility as well. So we really would like to reach out more types of communities, especially with the youth that have higher risk factors. Right now, the connection that we have that's really consistent and stable is through GDOE. And so we hope that maybe after this panel or during lunch, we could connect with you, and maybe the three of us can find ways and how we could bring our services, or really just collaborate and kind of create a tailored programming for that, or maybe we can even provide some technical assistance as well.
Awesome, thank you so much. We have our next question. Oh, she was just getting water. Do we have any more questions for our panel? Back over here.
Yes, I have a question. I wanted to know, like, as far as like volunteer opportunities, are you all accepting volunteers? What does that look like? How's that process going? And what kind of like examples, or even any upcoming events that you all are having that would accept volunteers? I'm asking for a friend. I'm not gonna teach them pole dancing or anything like that. It's so inappropriate, but for a friend.
So I mean, with Rotaract, we are a volunteer organization. All of my members strictly just come from the community. We all come from different backgrounds. So if I'm more than happy to connect with anybody. There is no age limit for Rotaract. So if you're worried about that, there's no age limit anymore. It used to be like 31, but I'm way past that. So
I'm not. I'm still within that. Okay. Guys, do you have any other volunteer situations open and available?
Yes, so every summer camp, we always need the help, the extra hands. Please volunteer, just connect with us at WestCare. We also have our programs as a listed and approved service learning projects for the students. So if you have students that are needing those service learning hours, they can definitely volunteer. We always need tech savvy kids that could create digital content, teach us the ways. So, if you have kids that are really just eager to get in there, a lot of our youth have so much talent that they're just needing an outlet to share. So please send them our way. Thrive Coalition, shout out. They have service learning projects year round, and doesn't have to be an event. It could just be at any time of the year, and we will find something for them to help us and support us with.
That's awesome. Awesome. Hannah, what are you thinking?
Oh, so we have our peer educator program. It's a very quick application. You can email me, galaguam.apa@gmail.com, or go to our Instagram at galaguam. It's in our link tree. But our peer educator program, so we help kids. Basically, they tell us what their interests are or if they have any work that they're doing already. This is also open to older, so it's youth and older. The youngest I think we accept is 12. But this is like a perfect opportunity for them to earn skills, because I know the skills area may be lacking when they get to the point of writing a resume. So we try to assess their interests, why do they want to join Gala, or why do they want to join our work? And so we try to place them where they can be effective, but also learn as they go, or even work with their schedule. So if they have a very tight schedule, we'll make sure to keep them to one or to singular events. So like our Together with Pride Rainbow Carnival, we had volunteers come in and help out. Thank you to all of our partner organizations, by the way, that participated. And then we also have, like you mentioned, service learning opportunities. So we work with counselors directly. Shout out to the high school counselors we work with. Thank you guys for being here and for supporting us. But yes, we have an open application.
Awesome. So again, many opportunities for volunteerism amongst our students, and then of course, as our panelists mentioned, even the adults. If you want to come volunteer, they are down for you. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, right back there.
Half a day, Debbie Ellen from Togi and GCC. So a couple of things that came up at the beginning, you were talking about data, that you had some data about the statistics and so forth, right? So one of the things is, I know that when I'm preparing for either writing papers or preparing for my courses at GCC, I want to have current data, but it's really hard to find current data. So I'm wondering if there's a way, like how is that data gathered? Is it gathered, regularly, frequently? Is it just survey driven, self-reporting, or are there focus groups? And one of the things also that comes to my mind that I'm wondering about, I remember back in the day, I can say that a long time ago, when I first started teaching, they were doing DARE programs, if any of you are familiar with that. Somebody is, okay. But it was like police officers, I think, and they would come in. And what stands out in my mind is that it was a long program. It was very extensive. But in that group of students, there were like 28 of them at the time. 24 of them were trying to get counseling because of the issues that were going on in the home. And one of those students took her life. So the thing that comes to my mind is that if we're going in, are we presenting programs, but are we getting to the root of what may drive them into that? So if you're talking about prevention, I'm thinking more about what do they really need? What are their needs, like you brought up about if their parents or family members, are addicts or users or homeless, or, all the different situations. So how are we addressing, or how are you guys addressing some of those underlying prevention strategies? And where do we get the data? So I got two questions there. Sorry, thank you, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Miss Debbie. I brought up the data, so I'll speak to the data. Yeah, so so Hannah and I, with Gala, we are actually, we were under the Partners for Success grant under Project Director Sarah. And so as part of our programming, we had our selective strategy, which was our specific evidence-based program, but we also had our universal. And so with that, under the universal, we had a needs assessment. And I believe Dr. Samara is still completing those evaluations. And those were specific to our pilot schools though. So I did want to mention that the needs assessment that we did and the evaluation and the data that we collected through those were specifically with the specific pilot schools, and we can go into that on the side for at every level from Gala, who worked at the high school level, and Rotaract that worked at middle school level. And then of course within our own evidence-based programming, there's typically a pre and post as well, so we have data collected from that. That is also, I believe, completing evaluation for the previous PFS 2018 grant cycle, which I believe should be ready soon. So I want to say that that is open to the community once it's ready and available. And as for the second question, just to speak a little bit on that, it's kind of when we're talking about our specific programming and looking at the root of the problem, the truth is sometimes we go in and we work with these schools or we work with these students, and sometimes we truly don't know what we're gonna get until we start working with them. We don't know where our programming is gonna necessarily take us. I mean, again, we have a structure to our programming. We have specific lesson plans or curriculum that's there and built in. But sometimes working with specific youth, we're really, it's more or less, sometimes it can be a little bit of a question mark. And so we go in and we have an idea of what we want to do and how we want to work with them. And it's not until we're really truly working with them and connecting with them that maybe we might see more, rooted problems or rooted issues that we probably didn't think we'd encounter. But as prevention practitioners, I think it's just kind of being ready to, again, connect them, right? So again, like Kat mentioned, if I'm not the right person, if my organization isn't the right organization, then I'm gonna find that person or that family or that youth the right organization to connect them with. And then always just being at the step. The great thing is being partners with Guam Behavioral is they train us. They provide all this training for us to be able to recognize signs of suicide, ideation, alcohol use, all this stuff. So it's being able to be trained in that and then knowing that, again, maybe we're not always the right organization or the right people, but we'll find them the right people.
And I just wanted to add to Robbie, and this is a model that we use widely in the prevention community, is SAMHSA's Strategic Prevention Framework, or the SPIF model that we call it. It's really broken down into like the 7, it's a dynamic process and broken down to 7 steps or principles. So one is assessment. That's the first thing that we have to do, is to look at what kind of community are we working with? What's the history behind this community? What led us to this kind of issues, right? And also what are the successes or challenges that this community is facing as well? For us, for Thrive, we had conducted a community assessment on Dadodo, and what we've implemented when it comes to data collection was, one, we dug through the archives, we looked at what data is currently being collected, and we kind of also just looked at the other side of that, of what else are we missing. And so we started to identify what agencies that we needed to tap into. We definitely referenced a lot from the SO Group's epidemiological outcomes work groups report. And the other thing that we are always excited to do is an environmental scan. And essentially, it is us going out, driving, or maybe walking out into the community, into the neighborhoods, and making observations and collecting that data. What are some of the risk factors that exist in our community, may it be in behavior or in physical design, that is contributing towards substance use? It could be, let's say, an abandoned building, or it could be just trash strewn about at a park, making that park look like it's not a safe place for our families to use, right? And so that tells us that maybe this community is needing some spaces that are safe for them to access, so that they can have, some activities that they can have at that public park. But if we have public parks that are not, conducive to that kind of activity, maybe that is one of the root problems. And we could, using that data, like what Robbie said, we then create data-driven strategies, and we want to make sure that we're just not doing blanket,
I see.
approaches, but rather we're doing some deliberate strategies that really pinpoint to these local conditions and risk factors. I'm nerding out. So, yeah, I was like, whoa. But the SPIF model is such a great way for everyone, I believe, not just in the prevention community, but anyone that is really interested in looking at the landscape of our community first, because we cannot find the answers unless we get as much information as we can get. Then we can make informed decisions and create strategies.
Very cool. Great way to look at things. And again, thank you so much for that question, Ms. Debbie. Any other questions? We'll take one last one if anybody's got them.
We have referenced a lot of times the work group's profile report. I believe they pushed out the 2021 earlier this year. We also have data, but only specific to Dededo, because that's what the target area is for Thrive. We have our community assessment for that. We have, at least for Westcare, we have the capacity and resource assessment. And so that one details the policies that exist surrounding substances here on Guam, and what the penalties would be, and what are some of the, the impact of those data. So it's really, I believe it's just by request, or we could even, we've had opportunities to present it in communities, but I think so. Do we have any other?
Yes, the EPI profile that they're mentioning is full of data. That's everything that we've collected. So the 2021 EPI profile, you can come see me, I'll send you the link. It's a PDF access also. And then, of course, all of our orgs have our own collected data. Like we mentioned, we each have pilot schools. So for example, we have GW, OHS, and TEDSN information. If you're looking for that for the past, or since 2018, you can just come and talk to us. And yeah, we have been presenting data, most recently at the principals meeting with GDOE, just to let these principals know what we're doing exactly when we come in and we survey these kids, and letting them know what's actually happening in their schools, and using this as a way to convince them for us to have our programs continue.
Yeah, awesome.